Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very senior and accomplished professional with deep understanding of cybersecurity from the UK, talking to us today from France, Mr. JC Gaillard. JC, welcome to the show.
Many thanks for inviting me. It's great to be with you.
Thank you. JC is the founder and chief executive officer of Corix Partners, which is focused on assisting CIOs and other C-level executives in resolving cybersecurity strategy, organization, and governance challenges. So, JC, before we come to Corix Partners, you speak about looking beyond the technical horizon. When did you first realize that cybersecurity was fundamentally a leadership and governance challenge rather than a technical one?
Quite early on, actually, quite early on, I became the chief security officer, effectively, of the international division of Rabobank in 2000, and very quickly I realized that cybersecurity was not about just what you need to do. Good practice was already in the process of establishing itself. Even if we look back 25 years, when I started at Rabobank and I was challenged by, what do I need to do to secure this business? Good practice was already there. It was already in the process of establishing itself. The first standards around cybersecurity, the British Standard 7799, was drafted in 1995. So by the time I started in 2000, 2001, 2002, good practice was already there.
Wow.
So knowing what to do to a large extent was the easiest part. But I very quickly realized that it's not what you need to do, it's how you get it done and by whom. And that's what we're going to be talking about, I think, again and again in the podcast.
Absolutely.
Cybersecurity is about addressing those three dimensions, not just what needs to be done. Good practice has continued to develop, of course, over the last 20 years, but still, large firms struggle with how and who, and that's the how and the who dimension of change, I should say, and that's fundamentally a governance matter, in my opinion.
Well said. And what gaps in the cybersecurity discourse motivated you to found Corix Partners as both a consultancy and a thought leadership platform?
Well, to be honest, Corix Partners, or what eventually became Corix Partners, I found it as an exit vehicle from my job at Rabobank around 2008, 2009, at the time of the financial crisis. But very quickly, ex-colleagues came to me, and one thing followed another, and I ended up building effectively a boutique consultancy business that eventually became Corix Partners. And I realized that CIOs in particular, heads of risk, heads of compliance, had nobody to speak to really to help them understand how to articulate a cybersecurity strategy. My typical client has always been not a CISO, but a CIO, a head of risk, a head of compliance, somebody taking up a new job, looking around and saying, right, okay, what's going on with cybersecurity here?
Right.
I don't see anybody in charge. Or I see 20 different people in charge. Who do I know to help me make sense of that? And that's effectively the gap Corix has been addressing over the years. And when it comes to thought leadership, to be honest, what drove me to writing, to putting my ideas into articles and then into books, is effectively what I was seeing in large firms, day in, day out as a consultant, large firms that would have had information security practices in place for 20 years, large firms that would have sent people to conferences to lecture the world on cybersecurity. And then one day you're called in because they've had a problem, they've had a near miss, or the CISO has just left and the new CIO doesn't know what to do. You come in and you realize the mess they're in. And that's really what drove me to putting my ideas into writing and to start moving ideas around, because we cannot we cannot accept that. We cannot just accept this is about chronic underinvestment. Large firms have been spending billions and billions collectively on cybersecurity.
Mm.
If we never look back, if we never address where the roadblocks are that have prevented progress in the past, we are just going to carry on and on repeating the same mistakes. And that's
Yes.
effectively what has driven me well, effectively to writing.
Very interesting. JC, many organizations claim to have a cybersecurity strategy. But in your experience, what distinguishes a real strategy from a document that merely looks good on paper?
That's taking us back to the what, the how, and the who dimensions
Yeah.
of change. I think the strategy, many cybersecurity strategies, when I come across them, they focus on the what.
Hmm.
Okay, and the how is always reduced to a mere matter of investment and resources. They never address the governance aspect. They never address the real dynamics of transformation in a large organization. Okay? This is not just about throwing money at the problem. If it
Hmm.
was, we would not be in that mess. Large organizations would not be in that mess. Okay? It's all about how do you make change? How do you drive change?
Hmm.
What are the real change dynamics in the large organizations? We all know large organizations, they are territorial, they are political, they are driven by personalities, they
Hmm.
operate in silos. We know that. That's their nature. It's
Hmm.
probably their essence. They work like that. It's pointless to pretend it's not the case. The, the real cybersecurity strategy that works cuts across. It engineers cross silo dynamics.
Hmm.
Okay, and it also confronts the problems of the past, the
Hmm.
roadblocks we've been talking about just early on. Okay, and it addresses them, and that's the real secret sauce, if you want.
Hmm.
Cutting
Very
across,
interesting.
and not ignoring the roadblocks and the failures of the past, and addressing them to move forward.
Fascinating. Great response. What role should risk appetite play in shaping cybersecurity strategy? And why is it so often ignored or misunderstood?
That's an interesting question. To me, I'm going to go off a tangent a little bit here. It's less and less about risk, I think.
Hmm.
When I talk to top execs, uh, they know about cyber. They know about cyber. The when, not if paradigm around cyber attacks has very much taken root in the boardroom. Okay,
Hmm.
they know that. They just they read the press, they listen to the news, they live in the real world, they know it happens every other week. Okay, so the penny has dropped in that sense. So it's less and less about risk, and it's more and more about resilience and about business protection, effectively.
Right.
And those are totally different concepts. Risk fundamentally is about things that may or may not happen,
Hmm.
to keep it simple. When, not if, means it's going to happen. And all of a sudden you enter a different dimension. This
Hmm.
is not about risk management, this is about business protection. So it's no longer about risk appetite, effectively, if you take it to the extreme. It's about execution, execution, and execution.
Correct. Correct. What are the most common misconceptions boards have about what a cybersecurity strategy can realistically deliver?
Well, that's a little bit the same as what I was saying before.
Yeah.
The most common misconception I come across is the siloed cybersecurity strategy. Okay, this is no longer valid. I think the world we live in has become more and more complex.
Hmm.
Cyber attacks are inevitable. You need to think beyond the native cybersecurity space. It's also about regulation. It's also
Hmm.
about compliance. It's also about resilience, ultimately making sure you don't break under attack, you
Hmm.
carry on operating, and you somehow resume operations, preferably in a better
Hmm.
state than where you when you started, because originally you must have had some form of
Yeah.
dysfunction, otherwise you would not have been breached. So it's
Hmm.
not a matter of returning back to the original state; it's about
Hmm.
matter of returning back to a better state. Anyway, I think those are the concepts the boards are increasingly getting familiar with. But the most common misconception is that siloed cybersecurity strategy, I think.
Hmm. Amazing. JC, how do you assess whether a cybersecurity strategy is genuinely aligned with corporate strategy rather than simply mapped by it?
This is again, it's a good question. Look for ownership. I
Hmm.
would say
Hmm.
look for ownership. Look who is really driving it. To me, for 20 years, we've tried to push the bottom up the same message towards top execs, and that's not working.
Hmm.
Okay, plainly and simply, it has not worked. Okay, so to me, to ensure that that the cybersecurity strategy is genuinely aligned, it needs to come from the top.
Hmm.
If you have clear ownership at the top of the firm,
Hmm.
either within the executive team, the leadership team, or even at board level, if you have visible, credible, audible ownership at that level, then your cyber strategy will be aligned
Hmm.
with the business strategy because it will originate from the same level.
Hmm.
Where there is misalignment is in the bottom up
Right.
approach, if you
Yeah.
want,
Yeah. Yeah.
because
Absolutely.
CISOs always lack context.
Hmm.
The dynamics at board level or at executive team level are complex. As we said before, it's large enterprises are political, territorial, driven by personalities. Um, all those dimensions you have at board level or at
Right.
executive team level. And the CISO very rarely has context. The CISO is very rarely a true C-level exec. And very rarely they lack context. So they end up building up a strategy which is what they think should be the
Hmm.
strategy of the firm. But because it lacks context, it cannot adhere to the broader business strategy, if you want. So
Hmm. Well
that's why it's
said.
important for the cyber strategy or the business protection strategy, the resilience strategy, call it what you like, to come from the top and to be developed at the top.
Hmm. Great response. Um, in boardroom discussions, and I've seen this myself, cybersecurity is frequently framed in terms of fear and loss. How can leaders reframe the narrative to focus on resilience and enablement?
Yes, I hear what you're saying, and I've seen it as well. Fear and loss are not, how can I put it? Fear is a very high level feeling, if you
Yeah.
want. It's a very human and a very strong reaction. Fear is not necessarily a bad thing, okay? Because it can have a very significant impact in the way you deal with the threat. Losses are unavoidable, as
Hmm.
we said, when not if. Yes, I hear fear, I hear loss, I hear those discussions. I think the key is um, for the cybersecurity leaders really to listen to all that.
Hmm.
It's taking us back to context, okay, and really you will only grab the context in which the firm operates by listening, listening, and listening. And that's very much what I advocate in my
Hmm.
first 100 days of the new CISO, which is a book I released last November.
Hmm.
Uh, and that's very much what I push throughout the first 100 days. You know, listen, 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 and listen. Build the cybersecurity strategic narrative with the business. Okay?
Hmm.
They will tell you they know about cyber.
Yeah.
They will tell you what they need, and then
Absolutely.
it's a matter of co-constructing the cybersecurity narrative with them, listening to them, and then of course delivering on what they asked for. But
Hmm.
very often, you know, if the new CISO starts the discussion with stakeholders by, you know, what can I do for you? How can I help you? You
Hmm.
know, that kind of servant leadership almost practice is 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 what's needed here, I
Hmm.
think, to
Absolutely.
co-construct the cybersecurity narrative with the
Yeah.
business. Then
Very
it's
well
not the
said.
CISO strategy, it's not the cybersecurity strategy of the CISO, it's the
Hmm.
cybersecurity strategy of the firm.
Well said. Well said. How can security leaders move from being perceived as blockers to being trusted partners in business decision making?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Listening, 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 and listening. There is only one answer here.
Hmm.
Listen to the business. Don't go in there knowing what to do. Don't go in there thinking you know what to do. Listen
Yeah.
to them. They
Hmm.
run the firm. They've got their own problems. Okay. the the firm may be doing well, the firm may not be doing well. It may be doing well in certain geographies, not in others, on certain markets, not on
Mm.
others, and so on. That complexity, you need to absorb it and you need to factor it into what needs to be done to protect the business. But it's all about listening, listening, and listening. Where trust breaks when you don't listen, ultimately. When you give the impression that you're coming in with ready-made solutions, that you know best, and that you know what needs to be done to protect the firm.
Mm.
You know, listen to the business leaders. They run the firm. They will tell you, and that's the key. That's the key. That's the key ingredient. Listening,
Mm.
listening, listening. That's the other secret sauce, if you want.
Very interesting. JC, my next question is, what signals indicate that a security organization has become disconnected from the business that it is meant to protect?
For me, one signal which is always worrying when I talk to CISOs or I listen to what they say online or on various articles written about it, about the topic. What always worries me is the CISOs complaining about budgets.
Mm.
That worries me. It always worries me
Mm.
because they always say, "Oh, the business doesn't get it. We're struggling with budgets. Budgets are being cut, and so on." Uh, when I hear that, I hear distrust.
Mm.
Because when I talk to CIOs, very often I hear a different story.
Yeah.
And that story is I can put any money I like on my budget on cyber. Okay? Many CIOs have told me that one to one
Yeah.
behind closed doors. I
Yeah.
can put any money I like on cyber.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know it won't be cut or not much. Okay? But generally, they add, but my problem will be to deliver. So we're going back to execution
Mm.
and the trust between top execs and CISOs. And very often when I hear that, or we're struggling with budget, our cybersecurity budgets have been cut, I hear there is a problem here.
Mm.
Okay, and that's my answer to your question. That's the best
Yeah.
signal I have myself to indicate that there is a disconnect between business and security team.
Amazing. And therefore, a follow-up question, how should accountability for cybersecurity be shared between the board executive management and the operational leaders?
First of all, that's a good question because it's from the start we've been talking about different. So we've been using different wordings to the board, the executive team, etc. I think it's very important to go back to basic governance concepts here. You've got the
Correct.
board. The board has a duty of oversight, duty of supervision. You've got the
Mm.
executive team, the leadership team. They run the business, and then you've got the operational teams. And it's important to see it in that way.
Mm.
I think the accountability, ultimately, in my view, has to rest with the executive team, and the board has the duty to supervise and to hold the executive accountable.
Yeah.
And that's the way I see it effectively. So it's important for me for accountability to be clear and unambiguous at the level of the executive team, more than at board level. At board level, the supervision can be handled in a number of ways. Okay, you may want at board level you have a different audience. You've got independent directors.
Yeah.
You may bring advisors, etc. So you build it's a different population of people. And supervision can take place in a number of ways, oversight.
Mm.
But at the executive level, you need clear and ambiguous accountability for the protection of the business.
Very
And
interesting.
sometimes I go as far as saying, and that needs to be built into compensation packages. It needs to be built into role
Mm.
descriptions. It needs to be built into individual objectives and into remuneration. I would go as far as that where it's allowed, because corporate governance is a complex business in itself, and from one country to another,
Mm.
it is operated in different ways. But I would go as far as saying that at exec level, accountability should be built in, and I would be supportive of ideas that go as far as embedding it into compensation, remuneration, and
Very
objectives.
well said. I have time for two more questions for you. What governance mechanisms genuinely help boards make better security decisions rather than simply receive more information?
That's that's taking us back to again the role of the CISO and what needs to change here,
Mm,
because I see um, again I'm going to go off a tangent a little bit to answer that.
mm,
Many CISOs in my experience are technologists by trade, by background.
mm,
So they approach the problem as a technical problem because it's their comfort zone and it's where it's where they're coming from, frankly.
mm,
And because they've spent the last 10, 15 years firefighting incidents and dealing with the avalanche of cyber attacks we've seen, they have not developed the kind of management gravitas, the kind of political finesse that is required to engage properly at the
mm.
top of the firm. So going back to answering your question, I think we're getting to the point where it doesn't make sense to keep expecting CISOs to be credible one day in front of the board, the next in front of regulators, the next in front of auditors, the next in front of pen testers, the next in front of top execs, etc., etc. That doesn't make sense. That profile doesn't exist. Large organizations have become too complex. The role, if you conceive it in that way, is bound to fail. So
Right.
it's time to start splitting the role, I think. And what I'm advocating more and more is the emergence of some form of chief security officer or chief resilience officer. Call it what you like. In some firms, they're even calling it chief trust officer. But anyway, somebody at the top of the firm um, aggregating all the business protection aspects. Uh, and that would attract a different type of individual. It has to be, of course, a business profile. It has to be built as a step in their career, so a
Mm,
genuine career development opportunity, not a dead end, if you want. And frankly, it could be a very important job
yeah,
for a young leader because it's a
absolutely.
very complex field. And if you prove yourself at that level, frankly, you can achieve a lot more.
Correct.
So I'm starting to see that type of role being packaged up. Well, I'm starting to see the need for
Mm,
that type of role to be packaged up. I'm starting to see more and more people talking about it. I cannot tell you that I've seen many organizations implementing it, but I think it will come. And that's a little bit my answer to what governance mechanisms could help boards. If the boards could see one exec at their level, at peer level, genuinely holding all those things together, then I think it's in terms of governance, it will help. It will help the dialogue between the various bodies here.
mm,
But of course, it's a difficult role to architect
yeah.
because of personal liabilities, because of all sorts of corporate governance aspects. But I think we're heading in that direction.
Mm. And my last question for you, and I think you partly answered it already. If you could change one thing about how cybersecurity is governed globally, what would it be and why?
That's the same answer. I think we're heading towards the creation of that chief resilience officer, chief security officer, chief business
Mm,
protection officer, call it what you like. But
yeah.
the real aggregation of all the business protection functions at the top of the firm and the architecture of that role and giving it not to a technologist but to a real business person and as a genuine career development opportunity. And that I think is the thing that is in the process of changing, I think.
Mm. Very interesting. And on that note, JC, I just want to say what a fascinating conversation this has been. I mean, we all know cybersecurity is a reality. It is here to stay. Our organizations, our computers will get more and more threatened and attacked by people from all over. And I think you gave us some very, very interesting pointers on how we must govern our cybersecurity challenges, how boards must get involved, and at the end of the day, how CTOs or the chief cybersecurity officers need to be empowered. Thank you for speaking to me and good luck to you.
Many thanks for having me on the podcast. It was a great conversation. Thank you. Can
Thank
I
you.
just push my books
Sure,
finally?
by all means.
The first 100 days of the new CISO, the cybersecurity spiral failure, the cybersecurity leadership handbook for the CISO and the CIO, all on Amazon. Effectively, they just they just package or repackage in different formats all the ideas we've been talking about.
Absolutely. And I'm going to encourage all our viewers and listeners to go and check out JC Gaillard's books. Thank you again and good luck to
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.